Howdy and welcome to the guide. Hey, wait a second. This isn't a self-cast build. Well, screw the new meta. We're doing something else. If you're looking for an interesting character with some interesting mechanics, then you've come to the right place. This is a pretty tanky character with respectable damage that can do any content. Let's check out the guide. We are a Gladiator that uses Herald of Purity and Herald of Agony to carry us. But actually, we aren't just being carried by our minions. We're also using ground slam and a high bleed damage to carry us on harder fights. I had always wanted to make a character that combined the power of bleed and poison into one strike, and because of that led me to making this character. And unlike most Herald of Agony builds, we aren't just stacking up poisons as fast as we can with a useless skill. We're actually trying to do damage ourselves, and we actually do clear out most trash packs with our ground slam. Since we are a Gladiator and our main personal damage source is bleed, I was looking into which skills I could use to give us the best bleed option. Most bleed builds will use Earthquake because of the aftershock damage, but since we have to stack poison on enemies and bosses to keep our Agony Crawler from Herald of Agony going, Earthquake is a little too slow for us. So, the best options are skills that have the highest damage effectiveness. At first, I was going to use Heavy Strike, as it's an obvious choice for knockback, and has one of the highest damage effectiveness of all skills in the game. But, if you use one of your gem links for melee splash, it seriously drops your bleed damage. This led me to Vol Ground Slam, because it does have the best damage effectiveness of any gem, while also being an AoE skill. However, my Path of Building numbers didn't seem great, but I realized that Path of Building doesn't accurately display the damage. On the Ground Strike gem it states, deals up to 49% more damage to closer targets. Since this says more damage instead of more melee damage, it should apply to our bleed also. I'm about 95% sure this isn't taken into account on Path of Building after doing some calculations, and I haven't seen any options to display that properly. If you happen to know about this, please leave a comment below. So anyways, our bleed numbers from Ground Slam when hitting close targets should be about equal to Heavy Strike, even though it doesn't seem that way in Path of Building. And you can drop some really big bleeds when Vol Ground Slam is ready too. For the playstyle, we want targets to be as close as possible so we can do more damage, have a stronger bleed, and most importantly, increase the chances that an enemy will be hit by our counterattack skills. So, we are using Empire's Grasp gloves. These reverse our knockback direction, pulling enemies closer to us, thus making our Ground Slam and Ball Ground Slam do as much damage and bleed damage as possible. Ground Slam doesn't have a built-in knockback mechanic similar to Heavy Strike, so to make this work I'm using a utility flask with a knockback during the effect. So, for the playstyle, you leap slam into a pack, pop your knockback flask, and watch as your Ground Strike and counterattacks instantly get you up to 40 virulence stacks. Our Herald of Agony Crawler and our Herald of Purity Sentinels help us clear speed greatly improve on mapping, while we also get explosions from bleeding enemies because we are a Gladiator. For bosses, the bleeds we apply with Ground Slam start to carry us more. Getting up close and personal could be a risky playstyle, but since we are a Gladiator, our defenses are quite hefty to compensate. We have max block chance for attacks and spells with our flasks up, and we have a very high armor and evasion rating to keep us safe. Personally, I think block chance is one of the most underrated defensive mechanics in the game, and it makes this character really tanky and it feels really nice. Overall, this character feels pretty good. We got a pretty decent map clear speed because of our Herald of Agony Crawler, and our bleeds carry us more against bosses later in the game. Also, when we're fighting bosses, we're stacking bleeds and poisons on them, and we're getting a lot of supplementary damage from our minions. So overall, it's a pretty good mapper and also a pretty good bosser. Okay, so now let's talk about my gear and flasks and everything. So, the first thing I want to talk about is my shield and my weapon. So first the shield. Similar to my last character, I'm using a Vix Lunaris. This is very similar to Invictus Solaris, except it's armor and evasion instead of armor and energy shield. It's the same concept here, where it gives us +2 to our level of socketed gems, and you can further corrupt it to get duration or just a +1 level corruptions, which I have not achieved yet. And also one nice thing about the shield is you can't be frozen, so that saves you a flask slot worrying about that. As before, minion gems, especially Herald of Purity and Herald of Agony, they scale extremely well with gem levels. Your damage will be much higher if you just focus on gem levels, and so because of that we have our Herald of Purity in here, so we're getting a free +2 to that, and all of our other gems are also getting +2 of course, but it's really beneficial for our Herald of Purity. Now my gem links are not finished yet. They're not as good as they could be. I still have some work to do on this character. I'm not completely finished with it, and I am planning to make another character in the future, so just be aware of that, because I do not have this character at its potential yet. So and even without min-maxing we can still get quite a bit more out of this build, but I just haven't had enough time to do that yet. But anyways, let's just go through my gem links real quick. We've got Herald of Purity right now with Ruthless and Brutality. And I'm not using any kind of hatred aura or anything like that, so Brutality is actually quite good, and I found one with 23% quality for pretty cheap, so I figured why not. And it actually, according to Path of Building, does give you one of the best options for damage. Eventually I'll change out Ruthless for Empower, but I have not managed to get it Empower yet. Empower will give you your minions more damage and more life than my current setup here. For my weapon, this is what I'm using right here. This is actually a pretty good weapon, and I got this for I think 60 chaos, maybe 60 or 70 chaos, so it wasn't too terribly expensive, but it has been a big chunk of my currency this league so far. I got lucky with the Fractured mod of 30% increased damage with bleeding, as I touched on in the earlier part of the video. Our biggest personal source of damage is our bleeding, especially for harder encounters. We're going to be trying to stack bleeding up, so that was a really lucky roll. But this weapon has about a 400 DPS, maybe 413 or 20 or something like that. But if you're looking for a weapon for this character, you want to either get a one-handed axe or a one-handed mace, so you can use ground slam. And try to look for something about 400, and I think you'll be good. You could probably get one between like 50 and 80 chaos, I think, and there's a lot of good options out there. So just keep that in mind. It doesn't have to be Fractured or Shaper Eld or anything like that. Just look for something with over 400 DPS, and that'll be good enough. Before I was actually using this weapon as my starter, and this has like somewhere around 350 DPS, and I actually got this for like 10 chaos, so you can get something kind of cheap to hold you over until you get enough currency to upgrade to a 400 plus DPS one-handed weapon. And I don't have anything linked in here right now. I just have a war banner, which I'm actually not even using right now, but I'm actually thinking about putting a 3-link for a Raised Spectre here and getting a Carnage Chieftain for free frenzy charges for me and for my Herald of Purity and Herald of Agony, and I think that'll help me out actually quite a bit, just having frenzy charges. So next, for my helmet, basically it doesn't really matter what type you get. You want something with either armor or evasion though, because we're getting a lot of those stats on this character for our defenses. But you want to look for something that has at least +2 to level of socketed minion gems. And this is where we're socketing our Herald of Agony. Again, this also scales well with levels, so you want something with +2 levels, right? And then personally, what I tried to do was I tried to get resists and stats like dexterity and intelligence on my other items, so I could free this slot up for like a heavy damage dealing helmet. And I'm gonna try to get something better than this later. Right now, I'm planning to use this helmet, but as of the current state of the league right now, we can't currently craft with essences or fossils on fractured items. There's like a bug in the game, and GGG has confirmed that they do have the feature disabled right now, and I'm keeping my fingers crossed that at some point they're going to turn it back on. So what I'm planning to do is use an Essence of Insanity. If you look at the helmet spot, it says that socketed gems gain 50% of physical damage as extra lightning damage, and I want to use it on this mask here because that'll give me a free +2. Like, these can't be changed, right? Those two mods can't be changed. So I will already have my life taken care of, my minion level taken care of, and we'll get a 50% extra damage, more damage modifier to our Herald of Agony. So hopefully, this is one reason I haven't gone as hard on this character as I have so far. I'm probably going to come back to this character later in the league once this is taken care of, once this is enabled, which I'm hoping it will be. And once I get a 6 link, I'm still on a 5 link right now. But anyways, let's get back to the gems. So I have Herald of Agony right now with added fire, damage on full life, and minion damage support. And you do want to have minion damage support in the helmet because you're getting +2 to that also. And added fire is not the best choice. You actually want to have an empower here too, but I just haven't gotten around to buying one. Same with this, the Herald of Purity. But you want to have an empower here for sure. And next, amulet. So for me personally, I went for something with life and then a bunch of stats, because we do need quite a bit of dexterity and intelligence, so I was just trying to fill up those with also getting some physical damage. And this wasn't too expensive. I think I got this for like 15 chaos, wasn't too bad. And then I crafted the intelligence, extra intelligence on there. For my body, I'm using Duresso's Defiance, and I think this is actually quite a good body armor. It's quite underrated. For one, it gives you life, which is nice. Armor, evasion, both of those play well into our character. And then a little bit of dodge chance and some free leech, which goes a long way. You can kind of like mold your passive tree around that if you felt like it. Like, you don't have to get life leech on the tree, which is nice. But the biggest thing about this is that you get endurance charges for free, and then those endurance charges then turn into free onslaught for you, and it's a stronger than normal onslaught also, which is really nice. It helps out your clear speed quite a bit. Like, you leap something around actually quite fast, and it increases your attack speed, which helps you build up poison more to keep your Herald of Agony going longer and stronger. But I really like this armor. I haven't been able to 6 link it yet. I've been running on a 5 link, and I was still able to clear out Elder and all of his guardians in the middle tier maps. I'm hoping I can get a 6 link. I wasted about like 400 or so fuses, maybe 450 fuses, and didn't 6 link it. I'm gonna keep going on it until I eventually get it, hopefully. But I really like this armor for this character, and I can highly recommend it. Feels really nice. For my links, I've got Ground Slam in here, and then we've got Maim for extra physical and stronger bleeds. Chance to bleed for more bleed chance. This actually gets us to 100% and more physical damage. Melee Fizz, and this gives you more bleeding damage, more just hit damage, and more poison damage, bleed poison damage. And then Ruthless. Ruthless is really nice. Gives you a bunch of stronger bleeds every 3rd hit. And also, this is a Vol Ground Slam, by the way. The Vol Ground Slam is pretty nice because it gives you a lot more damage on your bleeds and on your hits, and it's a guaranteed stun, which comes in handy at times. But next, my rings. So here we're just trying to get some resist, life, whatever stats you may need. For me it was dex, and then after that some damage, some physical damage to your attacks. Next ring, we got some cold resist and lightning resist, so I was filling out resist here, some more damage, life, and health. Basically I was just trying to get some more life, so I got a bunch of strength on this one. For my gloves, like I mentioned earlier, we're using the Empire's Grasp, and these give you a lot of armor with the reverse knockback, and I have my trigger gems set up in here, all my counterattack stuff. Since we're a Gladiator, our counterattacks are stronger, so I wanted to utilize that functionality, that interaction on this character. And I found that my counter-strikes actually do quite a bit of damage, like Reckoning and Vengeance and Riposte. They actually, the damage on them actually feels pretty decent. It adds up, clears out like lesser packs pretty easily without me even attacking sometimes. So, and then we have those linked together with Poison because it helps us sustain our Herald of Agony virulence stacks against like bosses, especially if we block a boss or we take a hit from a boss, we instantly counterattack and get a few poison stacks. So it actually feels pretty good. And sometimes you'll jump in a pack and get like a bunch of stacks just from a counterattack for your Herald of Agony. For my boots, belt, I'm just going for more life here as usual with resists. I went for just a tri-resist belt. I went for one with an open suffix and I crafted on the cold myself. And if you can get a little armor, that would be nice, but I didn't manage to get much here. But basically just want life, get as much resist as you can, and then some armor. For my boots, we're using a evasion boot. Armor would be okay too, or like a hybrid one would be fine. And again, here you just want, for me, I just wanted to get a bunch of life and resists again to help fill up resists, because like I said, for this helmet slot, I want it to be very flexible until I can settle in on something permanent. But so I had to fill up resist a lot on my belt and boots. But yeah, just try to get a bunch of life and then resist. And then here I have my leap slam here with fortify, faster attacks, and also I'm running Vol haste. I might drop the Vol haste. I'm thinking about working a vulnerability in, but I might have to self cast it because we're kind of already starved for slots, especially if I go for a raised specter here. So I'm probably just gonna leave Vol haste for now, but I might change for a vulnerability. And I'll talk about that here in a second, because my flasks, so what we're running is Rumi's Concoction. This is really nice because it gets us up to the block cap, and gives us a bunch of armor, which is nice. For us, since we're a gladiator, if you look at our tree, we take versatile combatant, and it makes our spell block chance equal to our regular block chance. So what you want on this is just one that has 20% chance to block attack damage. The spell damage part doesn't matter, just completely ignore that and you'll be good. Next, I'm running Witchfire Brew, and this gives us more defenses with evasion and the smoke cloud, which is a free blind. But one reason I like this one is because it gives us a free despair curse aura, so it's like basically like having a blasphemy despair level 21, and it also gives us more damage over time, which helps our bleed damage and poison damage. But despair, if you don't know what it does make damage over time effects on enemies hit harder basically. Next, using Corlito's signature, and I think a lot of people might not like this in this build, but the reason I'm doing this, that I'm using this flask, is for the main reason is the 25% chance to poison on hit during the effect, because I'm not running 100% on my ground slam. I have 40% base, and then with this it gets us up to 65%, and I found that that's been enough to keep me fully stacked when I'm mapping. On bosses, we don't usually get more than 20 stacks. It's more like usually 10 to 15 or so. But I don't know, like on my 6th link, by the way, here on ground slam, I think one thing I'm thinking about doing is getting poison. And if I do go poison here on a 6th link, I would drop this flask and then run, instead of haste, I would run vulnerability, because we wouldn't need the extra poison chance here, and it would just make more sense, I think. But I might not run poison. I think what I'm going to end up doing is using deadly ailments, and deadly ailments will give you less hit damage on a ground strike, but it'll give you way more bleeding and way more poison damage, which would be really nice. And you can hit upwards of like 30k poison damage, bleed damage, bleed DPS per bleed, which is nice. But the other good point of this flask is that your poisons that you apply they have an increased duration, which makes them do more damage. The other stuff doesn't really matter on the flask. It actually does decrease our one hit damage, like our just per hit damage, but it is what it is. Next, I'm using a sulfur flask, and this is important because we do need one flask with knockback on it. I decided to go with a sulfur flask because you can use it 3 times before it runs out, so it consumes 20 of 60 charges. So that was really big for me. Also, it has increased damage, which is nice because that increases our bleed and poison damage. So just look for something with knockback. And then last you want to have a life flask with bleed removal. That's pretty much the biggest thing here. You can go for an instant recovery, but you don't have to. But the main thing you want is a bleed removal. So yeah, that's pretty much the character right now. If you're interested in seeing the full passive tree, here's what it looks like basically at level 88. I think I'm 88 right now, 87 right now. I will put a path of building link in the description as usual, so you can check out the tree further and all of my items and gym links and everything in a little bit more detail. This character is not finished, like I said. I am going to keep playing it a little bit, but I might start my second character and come back to this character later after I can hopefully get this 6 linked. And the main thing I'm waiting for though is this bug to be fixed from GGG, so I can hopefully craft like they promised, like we heard of in the pre-league build-up. Like, this is actually the biggest reason why I started this character, because I knew I was going to be able to make a good helmet for like a minion setup. And I've never used Herald of Agony before, and I really wanted to try out something like that. Because this is literally, this helmet cost me 10 chaos, Essence of Insanity cost me like 8 chaos, so I'm going to have like an in-game viable helmet for like 18 chaos, which is huge for me because I'm pretty casual. But anyways, that's pretty much it for the character right now. I might make a second follow-up guide to this character in the future. Most likely there's going to be another character guide in between. I'm actually planning on making a self-cast low-life cultist to actually follow the league hype, I guess, but it's going to be a little bit different than most people are running. I think a lot of people will be interested to check that out, but I do stream on Twitch occasionally. Look me up on twitch.tv/Kets. I'll put the link in the description and all the path of building info in the description. And I got a couple clips here left over from the Elder fight. It was not a red tier Elder, but I did manage to take him down. I did die once. It was kind of a meh death. I think I could have done it deathless, and like I said, all my gear is not finalized, my gym links, everything. I still have some room to grow on this character quite a bit. But I think this character is pretty solid overall. If you're looking for an interesting character, give it a try. But without further ado, let's get into the clips. Have a good one. Peace.